Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends. Today we are going to talk about how to safely feel your feelings. I almost think of this as a pinnacle episode because for the last 8 weeks or so, I've been skirting the topic and even speaking pretty directly about how having a good relationship with your feelings and knowing how to really gracefully be with or gracefully navigate the full spectrum of our human emotions is so essential in love, and how not knowing how, right, actually costs us a lot in our lives and in our marriages. So I totally advise that you go check out all of those previous 8 episodes for, fuller and more deep lead up to today's episode and deeper understanding, particularly the episode negative emotion aversion. That's what that's called. And the where a culture of love and safety in your marriage begins. And last week's episode about calming emotional reactivity for highly sensitive people. Focusing on our emotions and knowing how to relate to them well and work with them well is so core for us as highly sensitive people with our big, deep feelings, right? So, because we need to be emotionally savvy, we need to know how to honor and work with our feelings in general, and most definitely in our relationships. So today I want to do a little, hopefully kind of quick dive into how to feel your feelings and ultimately offer you a little process for how to do that yourself. So you can really have that with you. I teach my clients when I work with them in way more depth on this than we can do here now. I teach them really how to confidently and safely feel and move through their feelings. And I have various offerings and processes in my learning site that I give all my clients access to and they work through when they coach with me so that they can learn and develop this deep sense of safety to feel all their emotions. So they can really get that in their bones. And so it comes so naturally over time. So they end up having so much more emotional capacity and resilience, and also ultimately the security and the deep self-confidence and really the deepest genuine connection with their partner. So I kind of think if all highly sensitive people had this skill of feeling safe to feel their feelings and knowing how to feel their feelings really in a healthy way, if we all had that in our bones, in fact, if the whole world, if all humans had this, our world would be so different. It would be totally so much more peaceful, so much more respectful. We as a species would be life enhancing instead of a destructive species. I mean, okay, that's a little extreme. There's definitely some ways we enhance life as a species, and there are other ways in which we destroy it. And if we all had this skill of being able to feel really well, to feel in a healthy way, we would be much more of a life-enhancing species on our planet. So I want to give you a basic outline of how to feel safely today. But first, I want to offer you just a few reminders and elaborations on some important understandings about feelings. And actually, first off, right now, why we want to learn to feel our feelings safely. So number 1, when we do learn to feel our feelings safely, we really will grow our capacity to be comfortable with the discomfort of experiencing negative emotions, which we're all going to feel sometimes. We're not going to get rid of them as a human being, no matter what, that is guaranteed. Okay, so negative emotions are a part of the human experience. And so getting more comfortable with them is so key, right? Because then you can feel safer, more at ease with them, right? And this will really allow you to actually make positive use of negative emotion, right? And I talked about this a little bit more in the complaint episode, the complaint to connection episode. It's like vulnerability is a great example, but we can also take the emotion of fear or shame, and actually make positive use of them, right? Because when we're willing to feel those kinds of feelings, when we trust ourselves to know how to move through them in a healthy way, to handle them gracefully, what happens is we're able to take actions that actually lead to more intimate connection instead of more distance or disconnection, right? Like if I'm willing to feel vulnerable, I'm much more willing to ask my partner for a hug or to initiate lovemaking, or to be more honest and make any kind of request that might feel a little vulnerable, right? All of which, of course, can feel uncomfortable. But when you're willing, right, you'll be willing to feel those uncomfortable feelings and therefore be way more likely to get what you want. Now, just in your relationship too, but this comes to applies to everything in life, right? Like I always use the example of this podcast, like putting myself out into the world is become more comfortable for me, but it's also brings up feelings of vulnerability, and I feel exposed and people can see me and all those things. And yeah, but if I wasn't willing to feel uncomfortable, I would absolutely not have put this podcast out. And then I wouldn't have brought my dream to life, which bringing this dream to life brings me so much joy, right? So I've probably said this before, but discomfort, safely allowing and feeling safe to be with discomfort, actually, it is the currency of our dreams. It actually brings us so much more fulfillment in our lives. All right. Number 2, why we want to learn to really feel our emotions. We only have one volume dial on emotions. Okay, so imagine a volume dial like in the old-fashioned way on some sort of radio or something, right? When we turn that volume down, right, when we're trying to turn down the negative emotions, when we turn the volume down, if we don't want to feel them, we try to turn them down. What we do is we also turn down the positive ones. This is also referred to as psychological numbing, right? When we numb the negative emotion in us, the cost is that we numb the joy. We cut ourselves off from the positive emotions. We can't feel the full heights of love and joy. The other thing that we do, which I talked about a bunch more on the last episode, and we'll address it in a minute a little bit more, is that we act when we're uncomfortable with negative emotion. What we oftentimes do is act them out, right? In an effort to diffuse them, to get rid of them from our body, right? To stop that experience, we just like act them out, right? And in our relationships, that oftentimes brings us negative consequences. And so it's not a great option. And then the other thing that we do, as I was just talking about, is that we numb our emotions. We squash them. We push them down. We turn away from them and we numb them. And, this can show up as like buffering, which is meaning like using food or TV or work or alcohol or drugs or any other kind of addiction to create more comfort and to push away our negative feelings, right? And then they can explode. I've talked about that before. Like then they can like be pushed down and then they can suddenly explode. Or they're just like left there simmering beneath the surface, causing this kind of like drag on our system and making us more unhappy ultimately, kind of like a steadily less happy, right? So again, when we do that, we're squashing our capacity for joy and certainly for connection and love. Okay, so we don't want to turn down the volume on our emotions, even as highly sensitive people. Okay, the third reason that we want to learn how to feel our feelings in a healthy way is we don't want to make our partner have to be the one to fix your emotions for you. Right? When we need him to be a certain way, I've talked about this a lot, to do certain things for us so that we can feel better all the time. Like if we're upset, if we kind of rely on him to like support us through that. I mean, that's not really a problem if he's good at that, right? And if he likes doing that. But unfortunately, a lot of our men in this world aren't great at that, or don't want to do that, or feel deeply uncomfortable themselves, like helping you through your feelings, right? So when you have confidence to do that for yourself, you don't need him to, and you don't put that pressure on him. Okay, that's just a brief mention of that. And the last reason for now is that once you've actually experienced allowing and feeling the higher charged feeling through like any negative emotion, like once you've allowed them and felt them in a healthy way and they've moved through, which is actually what emotions do when you know how to allow them safely and feel them safely, right? Instead of them getting lodged and stuck and simmering below the surface, right, when we don't allow them. Okay, so then once we do allow them to move through like that, we can be clearer, right? We actually regain that access to that higher, wiser brain, right? And then we can really look at and uncover the source of where these feelings came from in the first place, right? And which again is the thoughts or narratives actually that are going on inside of you, right? That is the source of your feelings. But when we regain access to that sort of wiser part of us, we can uncover the source of those feelings and the stories we're telling ourselves and see our minds more clearly and really guide our thinking into more truth and seeing things in a way that really serve our relationships instead of don't serve them, instead of undermine them, which is what our brain loves to do a lot of the time in general. So when you're having a charged emotion, it's so important to know how to feel that safely for that reason, as well as all the other ones I've mentioned. So we can, of course, learn to allow and feel our negative emotions in a healthy, conscious way, which really will allow us to feel like the full heights of all the good emotions too, and so much more fully, and allow us to make more empowered choices and take actions that actually fuel closeness and resourcefulness and, a feeling of togetherness and easier resolution of issues with our partner and so much more. For me, being willing and learning how to safely feel my harder emotions has made my marriage really, truly so much stronger and so much more secure and deep. Because I really feel safe experiencing that full range of emotions. So I don't act them out nearly so much as I used to. And I can allow them to be there without kind of hijacking my behavior, right? So I can tell my husband like a hard truth or be honest about something difficult. I can set boundaries for myself, which is really, really important as a highly sensitive person to be able to do that, to not say yes to all the things or not let people push us around or treat us terribly, right? We need to be able to set boundaries for ourselves. So, but that can be uncomfortable. A lot of people don't do it because it feels uncomfortable. So being comfortable feeling my emotions allows me to set boundaries It allows me to say no when I don't want to do something. And it allows me to say yes to the things that I want to do, but I might be afraid of doing, right? And I can show up in integrity and feel safe to be myself totally and completely with my husband and really feel loved for it more and more as I see that being my honest, genuine self doesn't break us in any way, but actually brings us closer and closer in love. Yeah? Have I sold you on feeling your feelings yet? So before I actually tell you the process of how to, one of the processes that will help you have this capacity to feel and allow your emotions in a healthy way, I want you to understand what emotions are and what they are not. Okay, we get this super confused, and I think it's a linguistics thing in part, but we just haven't been taught what they actually are, most of us. And just getting clear on this, even if this is all you take from this episode, is going to help you so much. So what emotions aren't and what they are too. So emotions are not directives. They are not non-negotiable instructions to act. Okay, so what I mean by that is just because you feel angry, for example, it doesn't mean you need to yell, criticize, hit, right? I mean, this is kind of an extreme example, y'all aren't hitting each other, but at least I hope not. But there might be some yelling, and there certainly is probably some criticizing in some of your relationships. So just because you're angry actually doesn't have to compel you, right? The urge will likely be there, right? If you feel angry, there will be an urge to do something, probably at your partner, right? But you do not have to act that urge out. You do not have to act anger out, right? So a feeling is not an instruction to act. It can feel like it, right? But feelings really just give rise to the urge to do something. And if we just let the power of that urge take over and make our choices and drive our actions for us, like I said a few minutes ago, that's likely going to cause bigger problems, right? Like when we criticize, for example, then our partner's more likely to be defensive or criticize back, right? And then you have a bigger conflict, a bigger issue. And then if that continues, that becomes a very common part of your relationship and leads to further and further erosion of love, really. So when we let ourselves act out of negative emotion, instead of actually feeling our negative emotion, we're likely to get negative results in our relationships. Okay. All right. An emotion. So the other thing that an emotion really is not so important is our emotions are not thoughts. For example, if I ask you how you're feeling and you say to me, I feel like my husband doesn't prioritize me, that is not a feeling. I feel like he doesn't prioritize me is a thought. Okay, I feel like actually means I'm thinking or I'm believing or I'm telling myself the story, okay? So the actual feeling there is the result of you thinking that thought. So if you're thinking, I feel like he doesn't prioritize me, what you might feel is sad or unvalued, right? Something like that. All right. So if emotions aren't thoughts and they aren't instructions to act, what are they? They are actually this. This is the definition. Emotions are energy in the form of sensation in your body. Okay. And they arise from biochemistry, little hormones and all of that flood our system in response to our internal perceptions. And I usually just call those that internal world stuff, those perceptions, I call those thoughts, to be succinct about it. Okay. So in other words, in a simpler way, emotions are sensations in the body. That's it. That's what they are. And yes, understanding this is life-changing. So now that you've got some foundational understandings here. Let's talk about how to actually feel your feelings in a safe way. But first, I want to share what not to do, how not to feel, how not to deal with them. So don't get caught in your head and in your mind when you're trying to feel and allow your feelings, right? Don't let your attention go to your thinking. So this can be the hardest thing, one of the hardest things, because I guarantee you your brain will want to convince you that thinking is what's important when you're feeling a charged emotion, right? When you're feeling a strong negative emotion, your brain's going to want to take over and you're going to want to go into that spin, right? I know most of you are like, yeah, I totally know that place where you're thinking 1,000 thoughts a second, right? And they're all negative and like, what's going on? And they won't, all that. Or even thoughts about how do I fix this, right? But in that heightened emotional state, your thinking's really going to be pretty convoluted and it's going to be totally unhelpful. And it's only going to fuel the fire, right? Taking you deeper and deeper into that negative emotional space, like despair and rage. Like it'll spiral you down, right? It's not going to free you from the emotion. It's going to make it worse. So we don't want, when we're feeling our feelings, we don't want to go to the head. And when we notice that we do to our thinking, we get caught in our thinking, we want to bring our focus back to the body. Because remember, feelings are in the body. Okay. So we turn towards our bodies and we keep our attention in our body and on the sensations there, the sensation of the emotion there. That's really, like in a nutshell, that's how we feel our feelings in a safe way. But I'll elaborate a little bit more. So to feel our feelings safely, to allow them to be there, we just move towards them. Now, I know for many of us, on some conscious level or even unconscious level, this sounds terrifying. To go towards our intense negative feelings, right? Yikes. And really, I think that's because our brain actually does, on some part of it, on some level, think it might die. It thinks we're going to die if we experience the pain of negative emotions, right? And because they really can be intense. They can feel like a big scary monster that we need to like close up in the closet, right? Shut the door in the closet too, or slay, right? Like slay with a sword. Get rid of this monster. It's too scary. So if any of that might like resonate a little bit with you, I want to suggest this metaphor that can help you be more comfortable with turning towards your feelings in a safer way. So this is a metaphor that's come up twice in the last like 2 weeks with different individual clients. And it came up for them in their own minds. So I thought I'd use it, which is the metaphor of emotions, certain charged negative emotions or heavy negative emotions, being actually a scared cat or a kitten. And I think this is so interesting. Like, I don't know, why are our fears and our strong emotions, why are they feline? I don't know, but I hear that a lot, like the tiger, right? All of these things. I don't know. Our strong negative emotions are kind of feline for some of us. Anyway, like this little, like imagine that your emotions are actually a scared kitty, like a roughed up, unloved kitty who's hurting and shaking, right? Who's terrified, who's so uncomfortable. So if you, like, what does that kitty need? Does the kitty need to be yelled at? To be locked up? To be ignored? To be kicked? Like, no, right? Of course not. None of you would think to do those things if you saw a scared, roughed up, hurting kitty, right? No, what it needs is to be given your caring attention, and that's it. Or if you, again, I've used this before, but if a baby that you loved was crying, you wouldn't ignore her or yell at her to shut up or like hit her, right? These are terrifying things. No, of course we wouldn't do that. You would hold her and you would be with her until she was done crying and was calm again. you would give her your caring attention. Right? So that's what we do with our feelings. Our feelings of anger, of rejection and hurt, our feelings of shame or guilt or sadness or loneliness or fear or rawness or vulnerability, of anger, right? Even with our feelings of annoyance and irritation. They aren't tigers. They aren't monsters out to get you. They're like little scared kitties, little crying babies asking for your attention and care. So, without further ado, here's a simple process. I'm just going to offer you the steps and you can do it on your own. This is the process for feeling your feelings. So again, all it is about turning your attention when you do feel emotion rise up, turn your attention to your body. Right? Instead of going up into the story going through your head, take your attention and awareness down into your body. And really just be curious about the sensations that are there. You might notice the quality of those sensations in your body, the texture. What do those sensations feel like? What size are they? Do they have any color? Really just be the curious and kind observer of all of this. The way you would with that kitty or that baby, right? And you might even, metaphorically or even physically hold yourself, right? Like put your hand on your heart, give yourself a little hug, or even just put your hand on your arm as a gesture of care as you are allowing and being with these feelings. That can really help some of us, all of us, our mammal bodies, our mammalian bodies to feel safe. So in this way, with this curious, caring kindness, with this attention on the body, allow yourself to just be with the shifting sensations, because they will shift. Like they're not going to stay the same. I promise they're going to move around, shift and fade, rise and fall. And it can be only 90 seconds long. Supposedly a feeling only lasts for 90 seconds in the body. Right? The peaks of the stronger emotion only last about 90 seconds, unless we feed it with getting caught back up in our thoughts, in our stories, in our brain. Then we can keep prolonging the emotion or feeding it or creating new, adding negative emotion onto the negative emotion, right? So, but 90 seconds, right? That's not, it's not that long. Like you can handle being with uncomfortable sensations in your body for 90 seconds, right? Like you're not going to die, and it's really not so scary. Like 90 seconds of your life, right? Not bad. And the waves of emotion may come in and out, and it may be really like most of us will get caught up in our thoughts again a little bit. And so it might be a little longer that we need to be with this emotion. Sometimes it's 5, and to really process it through, which I'm not really getting into here, it can take definitely longer than 5 minutes. But if we're just allowing and learning more safety to feel our feelings, which is what this is all about today, yeah, a few minutes, 5 minutes here and there, taking time out of your day to do this on purpose is so powerful. Now, I do want to offer this. If you have PTSD or CPTSD or really active trauma, like that really sweeps you up into it, this might not be the best practice for you in the way that I'm suggesting, but you can do it in smaller ways. You can, start to sense your toes, your feet, or go to the edges of the emotion, like the sensation, like the edges of the sensation. But also at the same time, a really great practice for that is to keep your eyes open and just very slowly scan the room, seeing that you're in a safe space, that's really important for your nervous system if there's active trauma there. But for most of us with less intense trauma, like all of us have trauma, I'm just going to say it, it's not a problem. This is a beautiful healing practice. But do expect it to take time to get good at this and feel safe with this experience. I do want to say that when we turn away from our body instead of turning towards it, when we turn away from our emotions, that actually creates more unsafety. It takes safety away from us. It creates distrust of ourselves. Just like turning away from that scared little kitty would keep her distrustful and scared of you. So this turning towards is so important and healing and safety promoting. So do this when you're really activated, when you're upset, when you're afraid, when you're anxious, when you're feeling uncared for, right? Abandoned. Do this around your own wounds, the patterns of thinking and feeling that you're so familiar with, when you fall into those places that feel like, oh God, why am I here again, right? Give yourself this turning towards, this awareness hug. We could just call this whole practice the awareness hug. If you are like, wow, that's cool, but you're like me and you'd like to have an actual guided practice, like I actually think what I just walked you through could be used as a guided practice. But if you want one that's really specifically meant to be followed along as a guided practice, I have a video on my blog under the title, it's called Let's Talk About Emotional Safety in Relationships. And the video itself is called Emotional Safety Development Quick Practice. You can go find that on my blog. It's at lifeisworthloving.com/blog-1, I think, but I'll just make it simple for you and I'll put the link to that in the show notes below. So go check that out. It's a 3-minute long practice. So a great way to start building this muscle of feeling safe to feel and allow your harder emotions. Because I really don't think I can think of much else other than being the steward of your own mind, which we've talked a bunch about and I'll keep talking about, that will bring you so much deep confidence and self-trust and emotional safety as really knowing how to feel and allow and process your feelings. So explore this. Begin building up your capacity to feel your hard feelings, the resilience, really emotional resilience, by turning towards your feelings and giving them this awareness hug for, a few minutes, at least a day, or anytime you feel a hard emotion arise. This will help you be oh so well until next time. Before you go, if you've been considering coaching with me to get some deeper support on making your marriage what you want it to be and developing more emotional resilience and all these things we've been talking about on the podcast, I want to just take a minute to help you understand a little bit more clearly my approach to relationship improvement. So, whereas some approaches focus on strategy, like purely on strategy, which will only get you so far, when you coach with me, we always focus on what's below the surface, like on creating what I call a super healthy emotional immune system, really, which is the source of action taking and how you show up in the world and with your partner, right? So what I mean by that is we focus on the deeper foundational shifts inside of you that provide the bedrock for easily and really naturally knowing what to do and what to say to deepen and actually maintain the loving connection that you want with your partner, such as like becoming so much more comfortable and confident in handling the discomfort of your emotions, right? In a safe way, like we talked about today. But I don't neglect the strategies when we work together. You'll also learn the most effective strategies, of course, and they will come naturally and work way better once that emotional immune system of yours is vibrant and strong. So the result of this approach is that you become someone who always knows how to feel comforted and connected and safe and confident in yourself and in your marriage, and really who invites out the best of your partner too. And then you have a marriage that's fun and light and connected, what I call amazing, right? And that provides a safe harbor for you to always return to. So really you can focus on the other things that you've always dreamed of doing and that matter to you so much. So if you're ready to take that approach, you're ready to get to that place, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can simply email me at hannah@lifeisworthloving.com. Or you can schedule your free consult directly at the link in the show notes.